नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित् सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने
was asking, is it full attendance? They said some more have to come. Okay, so since Swamiji has come, we can start. Today's topic, modern creative vibrant life of Sanskrit, is a okay, yeah. समीपे आगच्छतु. अत्र शैत्यं भवति वा? न खलु? So, this topic is a response to one of the theories of our favorite, who is that? Sheldon Pollock. His thesis is he called it Death of Sanskrit. And yesterday in the evening I was telling you that by death of Sanskrit he did not mean that Sanskrit is not being spoken. Actually, that is another theory. There is a vocabulary. People use dead languages. There are certain dead languages for Europeans. Latin, for example, is a dead language. Greek is a dead language, they say. But here also, they themselves, about their own European languages, the way they speak, is something very interesting. Do you know Greek? When we say Greek, we are talking about the language used by Aristotle, Plato, Socrates in their books. But to be very specific, the word used in reference to that language, which was used by Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, that generation, is classical Greek. They use the word classical Greek in reference to that. And today there is Greece, that country remains. There is the country Greece is there. And those people speak Greek even today. But that Greek is called modern Greek, contemporary Greek. What they are saying is that classical Greek is dead. That is the Greek spoken by Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, used in their books, that is dead today. But even that is ridiculous, because there was classical Bengali, old Bengali that was used some time ago, and even before that, classical Bengali was Ardhamagadhi. You know that? Classical Bengali in its earlier form was Ardhamagadhi. Ardhamagadhi changed into classical Bengali, Ardhamagadhi changed into classical Oriya. And that classical Oriya, the Ardhamagadi form changed into the present Oriya, and the classical Bengali which has come from Ardhamagadi changed into the present Bengali. Do we say that all those are dead? We cannot say. For example, we have to say that Ardhamagadi is alive today. Ardhamagadi is alive in the form of present Bengali. Right? Ardhamagadi is alive today in the form of present Oriya. And Maharashtri, there was a Prakrit called Maharashtri. That is alive today in the form of Marathi. Right? What are the Prakrits? There is another misconception created by not only Europeans, our own Indian scholars also, that there are two different languages called Sanskrit and Prakrit. In fact, there are no such two different languages called Sanskrit and Prakrit. All of you probably have studied one or two Sanskrit plays, dramas, Shakuntalam, right? If you go into the drama, you will see that certain characters speak in Sanskrit, other characters speak in Prakrit. Characters who are, say, for example, Bhattas or Paricharikas, women characters mostly, they speak in Prakrit. And hero, king, rishi, they speak in Sanskrit. In that drama, you are able to see that the Sanskrit speaker is speaking in Sanskrit, Prakrit speaker is speaking in Prakrit, but characters are able to understand each other. It is understandable to each other, right? It is similar to the standard Bengali that we use today and the lower level Bengali, the what we call, sometimes they use the word corrupt Bengali. It's not corrupt actually, that word is not suitable, but Bengali that is used by lower level workers, say some mechanic on the road or some fruit vendor on the road, he speaks a kind of a Bengali which is different Bengali. We use the word dialect for it. Dialect means varieties of our language, various varieties of language. Bengali itself is spoken in one variety in Navadvip area, in another variety in the borders of Bangladesh. Calcutta people speak a totally different Bengali, right? So, varieties of Bengali is spoken. These are all called dialects of Bengali. Okay? Did you learn this word, dialect? Do you know this word? No. You should note. Varieties of Bengali are called dialects. D-I-A-L-E-C-T, dialects of Bengali. Dialects of Bengali. And these dialects are of two kinds, regional dialects that is varieties of Bengali spoken in various parts of Bengal, in different regions of Bengal are called regional dialects of Bengali. And another word is social dialects of Bengali. For example, educated Bengali, uneducated Bengali. Bengali spoken by educated Bengalis is educated. This is also called as elite Bengali. This is also called as non-elite Bengali. This is called class Bengali. This is called mass Bengali. For every language, these varieties exist. Whether it is Marathi or Telugu or Tamil, any language has such dialect varieties, various dialects. But we do not call educated Bengali, elite Bengali, class Bengali as Bengali and uneducated Bengali as a different language. No one uses that word. They are not different languages, they are only dialects of the same language. When would it become a different language? For example, Oriya is a different language, because if a Bengali speaks Bengali, Oriya speaker may not understand. There are some people who can speak both, that they are bilinguals. But generally, when Oriya is spoken, Bengali does not understand. If Bengali language is spoken, Oriya person does not understand that. That is why they are called two different languages. If there is a same language and varieties of that are understood by other people, I can understand if I am an educated Bengali speaker, I can understand the uneducated Bengali. Uneducated Bengali speaker can understand educated Bengali. Because they are understood by each other, they are only called dialects, not two different languages. You understand? If I have to call it a different language, it should not be understood. Oriya is called a different language because I am not able to understand it. Bengali people cannot understand it. You understand? So, Prakrit that is spoken in the play Shakuntalam by some characters is being understood by other characters in the same play, which means that Prakrit and Sanskrit are only dialects. They are not different languages. You understand? Prakrit and Sanskrit are not two different languages, they are only dialects. Because proof is that characters are able to understand the language. It is mutually intelligible. We use the word mutually intelligible. They are mutually understandable. As long as they are mutually understandable, they have to be called the same language. So, please keep it in mind, go on telling everyone, campaign it, publicize it, that there were no two different languages called Sanskrit and Prakrit. Sanskrit and Prakrit were the same language. They were two different dialects of the same language. If you see the geography of India, the landscape of India, how much part of India was speaking Sanskrit and Prakrit? Major part of Indian geography was speaking Sanskrit and Prakrits only. For example, the part where Bengali is spoken today, Ardhamagadi was spoken. When Ardhamagadi was spoken in this area, there were Sanskrit speakers also here. Ardhamagadi was being spoken only by the uneducated. If you go across the landscape of India, different Prakrits were spoken all over India, but all over India Sanskrit was also spoken. At that time, Sanskrit was the educated dialect and all the Prakrits were the uneducated dialects, the mass dialects of Sanskrit. You understand what was happening? So, Sanskrit was spoken. What Sheldon Pollock says is that Sanskrit was never spoken. It was only a liturgical language. Liturgical language means only language used for puja path. पूजा पाठ के लिए ही संस्कृत था. संस्कृत तो भाषण में नहीं था, कोई संस्कृत में बोलता ही नहीं था. अगर वह सच है, संस्कृत में कोई बोलता ही नहीं, तो ड्रामा में, शाकुंतलम में एक कैरेक्टर को संस्कृत में बोल रहा है ऐसा बताया कालिदास, तो लोग हंस पड़ते, है ना. People would have laughed at Kalidasa. Hey, you are showing this character speaking Sanskrit. This is absolutely nonsense. No one speaks this language. Why are you showing this drama, in this drama that people are speaking Sanskrit, right? Bharata's instruction to use Prakrita for certain characters was for realism. Realism means the drama has to reflect the reality. Whatever is there in the society, it has to reflect. Why he has advised any playwright to use Prakrita for certain characters is because in the society that was happening. Samskrita was being spoken by certain people, Prakrita was being spoken by certain other people. The same reality it should reflect. That instruction by Bharata was being followed by Kalidas and others. That is why they have done that. And why should you be realistic? Not because Bharata has asked you to do. If you shoot a Bengali movie or a Hindi Bollywood movie, if you don't show reality, the movie will be flop. It will not be a hit movie. For example, in a Bollywood movie, let us say, they show ocean in Delhi. Two characters in that movie, in Delhi they say, shall we go to beach? And they go to beach. And in Kolkata, they say that, shall we go to Qutub Minar? And they go to Qutub Minar. Then people would laugh at that movie because it is not realistic, right? So, Bharata's instruction to be realistic is not an imposition, it's common sense. If you don't show realism in your literature, whether it is a play or a kavya or whatever, if you don't show realism, it will not gel with the audience. Audience will not accept it at all, right? So, if audiences have accepted Shakuntalam with Sanskrita and Prakrita being understood by each other, it means that people knew that that was reality. You understand? They knew, the audience accepted that Sanskrita and Prakrita are two different dialects only. They are being understood by people, each other. Sanskrit speaker can understand Prakrit, Prakrit speaker can understand Sanskrit. That was the reality at that time. That is why they accepted that kind of situation being shown, whether it is Anargha Raghava or Vijnana Shakuntalam or Mudra Rakshasam, whatever play it is. They accepted. The different authors, whether it was Bhasa, whoever, whoever Sanskrit playwright has created that kind of a situation, that was completely accepted by the audience, which means that that was the reality. So, if that is the reality, who was asking that I would learn Sanskrit, please teach me, please teach me. For example, these uneducated, non-elite Bengalis, do they ask, sir, please teach me educated Bengali? Why would they ask? They are able to understand educated Bengali. They do not go to a course and say, sir, please teach me educated Bengali, I will understand educated Bengali. No one would ask. Similarly, Prakrit speakers would never ask, please teach me Sanskrit, because they were already understanding. You understand? So, when people tell you that in the ancient period Sanskrit was denied, Sanskrit was not given to people, it was hidden. It was hidden from the masses. Is it correct? It can be called denied, it can be called hidden when I ask for it and you don't give me. For example, you ask for this pen and I say, no, I wouldn't give you my pen. It means I am denying the pen to you. If somebody has asked for Sanskrit, if I said, no, I wouldn't teach you Sanskrit, that means I denied Sanskrit. But who asked for Sanskrit? They already understood Sanskrit. Prakrit speakers were already able to understand Sanskrit. So why would they ask, please teach me Sanskrit? You understand? So in future, if at any point of time people tell you that in ancient period in India, Sanskrit was denied to people, what you should do? You should laugh aloud. What you should do? अरे पागल हो, क्या बोल रहे हो? संस्कृत डिनाइड, संस्कृत का तिरस्कार किया गया, संस्कृत के लिए मांगा गया और संस्कृत का तिरस्कार हुआ। ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ है, इसलिए कि संस्कृत और प्राकृत एक ही भाषा थे। That was the same language. Sanskrit and Prakrit are not two different languages, they are two different dialects of the same language, and one dialect speaker would not ask to learn the other dialect. You understand? And these Prakrits gradually changed into different languages. Ardhamagadhi, Maharashtri, Paishachi, Shauraseni, Magadhi, all these different Prakrits changed into different languages. When they were not understood by other people, then they were called languages. Now we call them languages. Bengali now, for example, Bengali speakers of ancient period were able to understand Kashmiri of Kashmiri people. But that was a Prakrit. At a certain point of time, Maharashtri Prakrit speakers were able to understand the Bengali Prakrit speakers. But gradually, historical changes have so occurred that Maharashtri speakers are not able to understand Bengali speakers. Still, they are Prakrits only. But gradually, they turned into languages rather than dialects. Once they turned into languages, probably at that time they started saying, I want to learn. For example, Bengali speaker says, I want to learn Maharashtri, that is Marathi. The Marathi speaker says, I want to learn Bengali, because they are not able to understand. Similarly, Sanskrit also gradually it so turned out that these speakers, these dialects turned into languages. So Sanskrit turned into a language rather than a dialect. Then people started saying, I want to learn Sanskrit, because they are not able to understand it. You understand? So, when a language changes into later forms, we only say that it has changed into a different language, that's all. So, in the case of classical Greece also, classical Greek is not a different language. The present day Greek language is a transformation of the old classical Greek only. In the case of Latin also, the classical Latin changed into various stages of Latin. The languages that we see today, French for example, is the contemporary form of Latin only. Spanish also, Italian also. Many of the European languages that are being spoken today are the contemporary forms of Latin only. So, Latin did not die. Latin only continues. It is continuing in the contemporary forms like Italian, Spanish, French and all these languages. Just as Sanskrit is living in the form of Bengali, Marathi, Punjabi, all these languages, Latin is also living in the form of contemporary languages, European languages. Okay, let us say that Sanskrit did not live in the form, just as Latin is not living in that form, Sanskrit is also not living in that form. No, it is not true. What happened to classical Latin is that classical Latin speakers almost disappeared. No one is speaking. But that was used for the purposes of scientific writing. Some of you might have heard about Newton. Did you hear? And do you know Newton's laws of motion and Newton's universal law of gravitation, some of these things? And these things were proposed by Newton, written by Newton in a book called Principia Mathematica Naturalis. It's a Latin book. And you are able to see the title of the book also is in Latin, Principia Mathematica Naturalis. Mathematica Principia means mathematical principles. Naturalis means of nature. So, Principia Mathematica Naturalis means mathematical principles of nature. So, the whole book is also, inside the book also, it is all Latin. These Newton's laws of motion were in Latin language. Universal law of gravitation was in Latin language. So, they were writing scientific books in Latin, though they were not speaking it. They were using it for educational purposes, academic purposes. It was all written in Latin. And for biblical purposes also, for religious purposes also, they were using Latin. For example, there was a Latin version of the Bible. Original Bible is believed to have been composed in Hebrew language. Why I am saying believed to have been composed, you will understand gradually. I will tell you the whole story of that. And there is a version of Bible in Latin also. And those two versions, Hebrew and Latin versions of the Bible, were the ones that were used in the churches for most of the time. So they thought, because Latin is surviving in the form of a religious language, used only for religious purposes, and it is used only for scientific writing purposes, probably Sanskrit is also like that, they thought. They imagined Sanskrit on the lines of Latin. And they started thinking that Sanskrit is only puja pathka language. But that is not the reality. Reality is that Sanskrit has been spoken continuously from generations. Today, because of Samskrita Bharati activity and all that, many people are able to speak Sanskrit outside in the streets. That is what they say. They say that Samskrita Bharati artificially revived Sanskrit. But even earlier, in regular Adhyayana Adhyapana Parampara, in all the Gurukulas, Sanskrit was already being continuously spoken in all the mathas, in Gurukulas, wherever Sanskrita Adhyayana was happening. And there were many places where a continuous Sanskrit speaking tradition was continuing. And at a certain time, when Sanskrit was to be included into the 8th schedule of Constitution, they did a survey where Sanskrit was spoken. They were able to identify certain villages where Sanskrit was being spoken. So, Sanskrit never died. Sanskrit was continuously being spoken, unlike Latin, which remained only a language of scientific writing or religious writing. That is a different story, but in a way, today, whether it is because of Samskrita Bharati or whatever reason, you are all able to speak Sanskrit very well. We are all able to speak Sanskrit. I am able to speak Sanskrit. All of us are able to speak in Sanskrit with each other, right? So, Sanskrit is alive that way. That is a different story. But this thesis, death of Sanskrit, he was not using that part. He was not saying Sanskrit is not being spoken, that is why it is dead. He was saying that Sanskrit lost its creativity. What it means is that after 1850, no new ideas have been expressed through Sanskrit. For example, after 1850, no new Dharma Shastra was composed through Sanskrit. After 1850, no new Navya Nyaya or any such idea within Nyaya Shastra, it has come. No new poetry was composed, no new forms of poems, Sanskrit poems were composed. And another allegation by him is that modernity entered India and these modern ideas have not been expressed through Sanskrit. Right? Modernity entering India is a historical development. Modern ideas, anti-religious ideas, common man's dignity, democracy, liberty, equality, fraternity, social equality, political equality, economic equality, all these modern ideas, they have not been expressed through Sanskrit. That is also another reason why he says there is Sanskrit died and there is death of Sanskrit. He says no new genres of Sanskrit literature. Genre means Nataka is another one genre, Kavya is another genre. Okay, you understand this word? Genre. Genre means Rachana Bheda. Sahitya Rachana Bheda. Okay, G-E-N-R-E, genre. We can use it for movies also. There are various genres of movies, we can say. Science fiction movies are one genre. Social pictures are another genre. Mythological movies is another genre. These are all various genres of movies, we can say. In music also, we can say various genres of music. If you have heard Western music, if you would have used those words, this is Caribbean, this is that, this is African, this is soft rock, this is hard rock, this is metal. These are all genres of music. Similarly, Natakaha is a genre of Sanskrit literature. Kavyam, another genre of Sanskrit literature. And Meghadutam is a genre of Kavyam, Duta Kavyam, Sandesha Kavyam. That's another genre within Kavyam, right? So, these are all genres of literature, he says, after 1850, no new genre of Sanskrit literature has emerged. No new kavya, no new variety of kavya has come, no new creativity has come into Sanskrit literature. I don't know why these people speak like this. Probably sometimes they speak these things because they want to provoke you and get information from you. That's what I think, because if he would just open his eyes, he would have realized that in South India there is a form of narrative art form called Harikatha. Do you know this? There is a narrative art form called Harikatha, in which what they do is some religious devotional stories are narrated by a performer. He is a dancing performer. Oh, Jatras. So just as Jatra here, Harikatha is there. Just as in Jatras, they narrate devotional stories, okay, with symbols. He dances, he does steps in his steps, and he keeps dancing and he keeps narrating the devotional story, Bhakti Katha. That is called Harikatha. And these Harikathas were composed, majority of them, most of them were composed only after 1850. And most of these later to 1850 Harikathas were in Sanskrit only. There was a performer called Adibhatla Narayana Das. He was a very close friend of Rabindranath Tagore also, because Rabindranath Tagore heard of Adibhatla Narayana Das, that he was conducting music classes in Vijayanagaram, and he wanted to know the syllabus to be kept in Shantiniketan, which is now Vishwabharati. We call it Vishwabharati today. Earlier Rabindranath Tagore used to call it Shantiniketan. So at Shantiniketan he wanted music syllabus, and he consulted Adibhatla Narayana Das for this. So they were very good friends also. This Adibhatla Narayana Das was a very good performer of Harikatha. He was considered to be father of Harikatha, and that Adibhatla Narayana Das was a prolific speaker of Sanskrit. So he used to perform Harikatha in Sanskrit only. He composed many Harikathas in Sanskrit. Was that not a new genre of Sanskrit? And there were many composers of lyrics. Like the first Sanskrit lyric composer in India is from Bengal only. Who is that? Jayadeva. His Gita Govindam is the first book of Sanskrit lyrics from 12th century. Right? And later to him, many people went on composing. We use the word Chaturvidha Kavita. In that, lyric composing is called Madhura Kavita. Chaturvidha Kavita is Vistara Kavita, Madhura Kavita, Chitra Kavita, Ashu Kavita. These four are called Chaturvidha Kavita. Chaturvidha Kavita is Vistara Kavita is Kavya and Nataka. Vistara Kavita. Madhura Kavita is lyric composition, composing lyrics. Ashu Kavita, extempore Kavita. You know Ashu, what Ashu Kavita is. And the fourth variety is Chitra Kavita. You know Chitra Kavita, where there are poems composed with restrictions. And this Madhura Kavita, which started way back in 12th century through Jayadeva's Gita Govindam, it continued in India even after 1850. Many Madhura Kavita composers were there. In South India, in Tanjore, there were Madhura Kavita composers. Very interestingly, most of these Madhura Kavita composers came from what they call prostitute community, that is sex worker community. What is interesting about India is that this community was never disrespected. Do you know that? In India, this sex worker community, prostitute community was never disrespected. Prostitution was a legal profession. Do you know this? Prostitution was a legal profession. Do you know that? In Richakatikam, Vasanta Sena, she hails from that community, and there was a legal brothel house. She was an employee there, and she had to give some money as a compensation before leaving that. You know that in Richakatikam? To leave that place, she has to pay some money there. And these are all legal. They were funded, and taxes were collected by the government also. So, this community in Tanjore in 17th century, 18th century, and later even after 1850 during 19th century, these people were composers of Sanskrit poetry. They had the titles Chaturvidha Kavita Visharada. They were given the titles Chaturvidha Kavita Visharada. So, as part of that, they were composing Madhura Kavita also, and they continued that. Composing Madhura Kavita, that is Sanskrit poetry in lyrical form, they continued. And there were many Sanskrit lyrical composers. Tyagaraja, for example, comes from that period only. He composed his lyrics in Telugu prominently, but he composed some Sanskrit lyrics also as part of that. And there were the Sangita Traya, the three major singers of Carnatic music. They were poet singers, lyric composers. All the three of them composed in Sanskrit also. Sanskrit lyrics also. They performed them in classical Carnatic form. And there were many Sanskrit lyrics that were being composed in the north also. But they were sung in Hindustani style. And not only music. Do you know the time of Arya Samaj? When it started? When did Swami Dayananda Saraswati start Arya Samaj? In 19th century, only during 1850 only. The exact period that Sheldon Pollock is mentioning, exactly at that period Arya Samaj was started. And Swami Dayananda Saraswati, I think you all know, is a Sanskrit fanatic. Sanskrit fanatic is a good word. You are all Sanskrit fanatics. I am also Sanskrit fanatic. He is also Sanskrit fanatic. We are using the word Sanskrit fanatic in a very positive sense. He was insisting that people should speak only in Sanskrit, and he was also speaking all the time only in Sanskrit, and he composed everything in Sanskrit. He composed this Satyartha Prakasha in Sanskrit. He composed this Rigvedadi Bhashya Bhumika in Sanskrit. He composed most of his books only in Sanskrit. How can Sheldon Pollock say that new ideas have not come in Sanskrit? Arya Samaj is a completely new idea only. Arya Samaj is completely a revolutionary, a radically new idea. Its arguments are completely different from the traditional arguments. right? And he called all the traditional people as Sanatanis. For him, Sanatani is a bad word. If anyone follows the tradition that was before him, he used to call him, Sanatani, isko chhod do, bahar feng do. So, he was such a radical. Whatever he said was a radically new idea, but expressed through Sanskrit language. So, were not new ideas expressed through Sanskrit at that time? And another prolific writer in Sanskrit was, during the same period, was an author from Bengal, Baladeva Bhushana Vidyasagara. He is what we call ISKCON today. He belongs to that Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. He was a little before Srila Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada. He was just a few years before, some decades before him. He prolifically wrote in Sanskrit, and his writings went up to England also in Sanskrit. His Sanskrit writings went to the other countries also, Britain and other countries also. He was known worldwide. His writings were known worldwide. He wrote from Bengal in Sanskrit about Gaudiya Vaishnava, articulated Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. Exactly during that period only, 1850 and later only. Baladeva Bhushana Vidyasagara. And as you all know, the kind of ideas that were being expressed by this group of people, Srila Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada or his predecessors, were radically new ideas. They were not even traditional ideas. We all know that Chaitanya's ideas themselves were radically new, that created Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Through Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami, they got propagated. But these ideas from Vidyasagara were even newer than the ideas of these people. And with all such new ideas, they spread all over the world in Sanskrit only. They were expressed in Sanskrit language only. But I don't know why they can't see that this kind of new developments were happening and they were being articulated through Sanskrit only. And you know that Sanskrit was being not only used for just lyrics, new novels came. Novel is a new genre. Novel is a new genre coming from the influence of Western literature only, but Sanskrit novels were composed. Sanskrit short stories were composed. And there was this national movement, freedom struggle at that time. And during freedom struggle, people started composing lyrics in Sanskrit in praise of Bharat Mata. They were all in Sanskrit only, but it's a new idea. National movement itself is a new idea. Bharat Mata itself is a new idea. The Rashtra Bhavana, Rashtra as Vedic idea is a different thing. But this national movement, at the time of national movement, that Rashtra Bhavana was a new kind of idea. And the form, picture that is given to Bharat Mata is a new idea. But that was all being articulated through Sanskrit language only. There were many poets all over the country who were composing lyrics in praise of Bharat Mata in Sanskrit language. Songs about Bharat Mata in Sanskrit language. How can he say that nothing new was happening in Sanskrit at that time? And during the same period, there were many kinds of books like what we call Dharma Sindhu and Nirnaya Sindhu. You know these books? These books were also composed almost during the same period. These books are Dharma Shastra books only. They might say that these were composed for the convenience of people who were forgetting traditions. Oh, okay. What if you have asked any new book has been composed or not. Books were composed, and Dharma Sindhu kind of genre itself, that kind of variety of book itself is a new idea. Yes, it is true that people were forgetting traditions, so they wanted to instruct them through these books. But that itself is a new idea, and that new idea was being articulated through the books like Dharma Sindhu and Nirnaya Sindhu. And in Jyotisha, many new Jyotisha books have come exactly during that period only, because the Muhurta Martanda and Kala Madhava, all these books in Jyotisha Shastra, they were being disputed at that time. Many Muhurta procedures were being disputed at that time, and because of those debates, new books had to emerge. And new Jyotisha books emerged only during 1850 and later. Okay, so we can go on listing like this a huge amount of Sanskrit literature that was coming only after 1850. I don't know whether it has been included in your MA syllabus or not. Most of the MA Sanskrit syllabi in the country, they include contemporary Sanskrit literature. Contemporary, that is modern Sanskrit poetry. For example, even haikus. You know haiku? Haiku is a kind of small poem, free verse poem, that is being composed in Sanskrit. There are many haikus in Sanskrit. They are part of MA syllabus in most of the MA Sanskrit syllabi all over the country. They introduce haikus also there. Do you know free verse? Do you know the word free verse? Free verse means poetry which does not have any chandas. Poetry which is not written to meters is called free verse. Mukta chandaha. Do you understand the word Mukta chandaha? That's all. That is Mukta chandaha. Mukta chandaha, is it an ancient form or modern form? Absolutely modern. There was never a Mukta chandaha in ancient period. But Mukta chandaha is there. How so much of Mukta chandaha is being composed today? Right? So how can we say that modernity has not been absorbed into Sanskrit? You understand? And Mukta chandaha is a fashion for many Sanskrit speakers, for many Sanskrit poets. When they go to a conference or some congregation of Sanskrit literature people, they say, I have composed some Mukta chandaha, shall I recite? And there are sessions where Mukta chandaha is recited by Sanskrit speakers to each other. This is a new culture. Haiku is a variety of Mukta chandaha only. It is a Japanese variety. It has 3 lines and very short poem, very powerfully expressed poem. Please try, all of you, write some haikus. Haiku. Some people write it like this also, but very short 3-line verse, Mukta Chanda, free verse, which expresses powerful ideas. Okay, it has got restriction in terms of number of syllables also. Number of syllables it should have also. But these new forms are coming and they are being expressed in Sanskrit. Actually, recently somebody mailed me a book of haikus in Sanskrit, Sanskrit haikus. And there are MPhil dissertations which are done on Sanskrit haikus. Somebody did an MPhil on Sanskrit haikus. So there are every new genre that comes into vogue in various Indian languages, they are all being experimented in Sanskrit also. Okay? So it is not true if someone says that Sanskrit has not responded to the changing times. Sanskrit has responded to the changing times, and one Professor David Shulman from Israel, he is a great scholar of Sanskrit also, apart from being a scholar in Persian, being a scholar in Tamil, being a scholar in Telugu. He learnt Telugu recently, but he commands Telugu very well. He is a great scholar, multilingual, polyglot scholar, and he has got a great command on Sanskrit also. He learnt Carnatic classical music also. He made a statement against this Sheldon Pollock's statement. I think he probably kept Sheldon Pollock's statement in mind, his critical philology, what Sheldon Pollock calls, whenever he makes bad statements about Sanskrit, he covers it under critical philology. He uses that word. So, probably against that, Sheldon Pollock says Sanskrit is after all a language. Any language expresses everything. So, Sanskrit also expressed everything, good, bad, whether you like it or not. If there is something bad in Indian society, that is also expressed in Sanskrit. If there is anything good in Sanskrit in Indian society, that is also expressed in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is after all a language. So, a language by itself cannot be either good or bad. Bengali is a language. Through Bengali you can express bad things and good things. You cannot say Bengali is a bad language. You understand? You cannot say Bengali is a toxic language. Bengali can be used toxically if you want. Bengali can be used to exploit people if you want. But by itself Bengali has nothing in it. This is what David Shulman was saying. Sanskrit is just a language. It can neither be called toxic nor anything else. Through it many things have been expressed. Some of those things, if one looks at it from that point of view, they can be viewed as social exploitation or something like that. Okay? So, similar expression can be made about Sanskrit also. Sanskrit is a living language and it has been living. It lived even after 1850 and it continued to express whatever new ideas have come into existence, whatever new genres have come into existence. All those got expressed through Sanskrit, whether they are good ideas or bad ideas. For example, I may differ with the ideas of Swami Dayananda Saraswati. I may differ with the ideas of Satyartha Prakasha, Rigvedadi Bhashya Bhumika. But I should be sincere. I should have the sincerity to say that Sanskrit was used by him. Some new radical ideas were expressed by Swami Dayananda Saraswati through Sanskrit only during exactly that period only. You understand? And Swami Vivekananda also wrote poetry in Sanskrit. Do you know that? He composed poems in Sanskrit. That was also during the same period, 19th century only. Right? And many Swamijis belonging to Ramakrishna Matha order, they composed various essays or articles or verses in Sanskrit only. That also belongs to the same period. Ramakrishna Kathamritam is also a Sanskrit book. That was also composed exactly during that period only, 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century.
Swamiji also wrote letters in Sanskrit.
Yes, there are to his brother disciples. See, letters, writing letters is a totally new idea. In ancient period there were no letters. Right? Letters, that too modern type of letters with the style of letters that we write today, absolutely new. It's a modern idea. That kind of letters were not there during ancient period. If at all there were any letters, they did not have the format that we are using today. Right? So, that kind of letters being written in Sanskrit itself is a new idea, and Swami Vivekananda implemented it, and many others at that time. Not only Swami Vivekananda, there were many that were implementing writing letters in Sanskrit among friends. That was happening at that time. Right? And Shulman. Shulman. Yes, yes. These are most of these words are common common among all the Abrahamic religions. Yeah. For example, if it is into Islam, it turns into Dawood. It becomes that. And Ibrahim is Abraham. So these words are very close. These are they have their Semitic origin, original Semitic origin. So same words, there is a possibility of continuing in various languages. So David can continue. Okay, so the point is that all of you, if you want to study Sanskrit during modern period as a research topic, as an MPhil topic or your research topic after your BA or MA, there is so much scope also. You can study that literature. Another name that comes to my mind is Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. Do you want to note? Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. He was such a prolific Sanskrit scholar, great Sanskrit scholar, that he used to all the time speak in Sanskrit only, round the clock only through Sanskrit. And he was a great Avadhani also. You all know Avadhani because one of your faculty members is also an Avadhani. He performs Ashtavadhanas. But there is a bigger Avadhana called Shatavadhana. Even bigger Avadhanas are there, Sahasravadhanas are also there. There are Pancha Sahasra Avadhanas also. Some people perform to the Pruchakas who are 5,000 in number also. And this Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni was a Sahasravadhani in Sanskrit. He used to perform Avadhana to Sahasra Pruchakas. And he was a prolific writer of shlokas, shastras, and he was a great Srividya Upasaka. He was a Tantrika. He commanded almost everything in Vedas, Vedika Shastras, Mimamsa, in such a great way that he almost became mad. He walked out of his house from one part of Andhra Pradesh and went on walking in search of truth, in search of greater spiritual enlightenment. Finally, it so happened that he could meet Sri Aurobindo at Pondicherry. And this Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni and Sri Aurobindo became very good friends. And Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni stayed with Sri Aurobindo at Pondicherry for a very long time. Actually, you know that Sri Aurobindo was having police cases against him. He was a militant freedom fighter. So he actually even bombed some vehicles of the British people. So there were police cases. These came to Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni also. Because he was staying with Sri Aurobindo, British police started chasing him also. They were hunting him. They were saying, you are also involved in these terrorist activities, these militant activities that are being done by Sri Aurobindo. So he was so close to him. So close that people could even suspect that they were involved in freedom struggle activities. And this man composed hundreds of books in Sanskrit only, all with new ideas. This Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. One of the books is called Vishwamimamsa, which gives a totally new interpretation to Vedic mantras and brings out ideas similar to astrophysics, physics, and it is almost a physics book written on the basis of Vedas only. All in Sanskrit only, because he never wrote anything outside Sanskrit language. And if you go to the website of Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni, there is a huge list of books that he composed, all was in that period only, after 1850 only. And he has his own philosophy. Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni's philosophy does not belong to traditional approach. His approach is absolutely different. You know, Sri Aurobindo's approach to Vedas was absolutely different. It was a radically new way of looking at the Vedas and interpreting Veda mantras. A totally different approach. Now, I don't know whether you know, there is so much of following for Sri Aurobindo all over India, and following the Sri Aurobindo's method, Vedas have been interpreted by, for example, a physics professor staying in America. He came up with the entire commentary on Rig Veda mantras in Sri Aurobindo's method. There are many such new books coming up, but they are all in English. But at the time of Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni, they were composing only in Sanskrit. And those new interpretations of Vedas, apart from the new interpretation by Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Arya Samaj, who wrote Rig Veda Adi Bhashya Bhumika, these new interpretations of Vedas were being done by Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni and the Kapali Shastri also, who was also very closely associated with Sri Aurobindo. Do you want to note? Kapali Shastri. Kapali Shastri. Was also a very close associate of Sri Aurobindo. They were all a big group staying in Pondicherry. They were all writing in those languages. Those were all articulated in Sanskrit only, new ideas. And this Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni from there, from Pondicherry, travelled to Arunachalam. Where? Arunachalam, Sri Ramana Maharshi was staying. You know Sri Ramana Maharshi? Ramana Maharshi was staying there. He was an enlightened person, Advaita enlightenment. He was a Jivan Mukta. He had Jivan Mukti. By the time Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni went there, Sri Ramana Maharshi was a young man. Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni was an old man. He met this Ramana Maharshi and considered this younger person, Ramana Maharshi, as his guru. Got inspired by him and was considering himself to be guided by Sri Ramana Maharshi. Because he could compose only in Sanskrit, he composed all the ideas of Sri Ramana Maharshi through Sanskrit. These new ideas of Sri Ramana Maharshi, new ways of looking at it, new ways of articulating Advaita Vedanta through Sanskrit only. This Ramana Maharshi, at the time of getting enlightenment, he was not educated in Sanskrit. He was a Tamil speaker. He went there only as a Tamil speaker. But surprisingly, interestingly, only Indians can believe it, he started composing poems in Sanskrit also. This Sri Ramana Maharshi. Without any formal education in Sanskrit, he started composing poems in Sanskrit and helped Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni in some of the compositions of Sanskrit poetry, Sanskrit verses that he was articulating the Advaita Vedanta of Sri Ramana Maharshi through Sanskrit. Many such developments happened in India through Sanskrit, through people like Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni, for whom Sanskrit became almost their mother tongue. They were not able to express anything other than in Sanskrit at that time. And they were having new ideas. They were radical people. They were revolutionarily new people with radically new ideas. So those were all composed in Sanskrit. How can anyone say that new ideas were not coming in Sanskrit at all? Exactly, wonderful. It's a very good example. When he mentioned Sutra Bhashya, I remember many new Sutra Bhashyas coming after 1850. One of them, Ramabhadracharya, belonging to the Tulasi Sampradaya, he is called Jagadguru Ramabhadracharya. He composed his own Sutra Bhashya also. He comes, this Tulasi Sampradaya to which this Jagadguru Ramabhadracharya of Chitrakoot in North India, he comes from, he is a born blind person, you know that? He is a born blind person, but an extremely great scholar in Sanskrit. He speaks only in Sanskrit and composes poetry in Sanskrit, does pravachan in Sanskrit, everything in Sanskrit. He composed Sutra Bhashya according to Ramananda Sampradaya, Tulasi Sampradaya, a new Sutra Bhashya from Swaminarayan tradition. So, how can he say that Sutra Bhashya Parampara stopped after 1850? Sutra Bhashya Parampara continues, Dharma Shastra Parampara continues, Jyotishya books continue, all the new ideas are being expressed by Kavyakanta, Vasishta, Ganapati Muni, Kapali Shastri, all these people. हाँ मैसूर, हाँ उनके भी बुक्स संस्कृत में होते हैं, है ना? सो दिस मच इज हैपनिंग एंड आई एम ए स्मॉल इंडिविजुअल, आई माइट नॉट हैव कवर्ड एवरीथिंग. There is so much happening all around the country. Any normal human being cannot cover everything. If we go searching, there can be more. There can be more and more of that literature. If one research student from this campus goes in search of such literature, whatever has not been expressed by me, whatever has not been covered by me, can be brought out, right? So like this boy is able to say, you can also go search and bring new material and say that this allegation that creativity in Sanskrit stopped with 1850 is absolutely wrong. New ideas have been expressed and are being expressed and are continuing to be expressed. New genres of literature are coming. Freedom movement was expressed in Sanskrit literature. Lots of new things have happened through Sanskrit. See, Arya Samaj is not freedom movement. It is actually a reformation movement. Reformation movement is a new idea actually. There is an anti-traditional attitude also in it. It is not traditional. Arya Samaj says many things which were not accepted by the orthodox Hindu society at that time. But that is expressed in Sanskrit only. You understand? So, modern ideas, we can say in one way, Arya Samaj is a modern movement. So, that modern movement, that modern idea, modernity has been expressed through Sanskrit only. So, this, what we are saying is, there is modern idea, there is creative and it is vibrant also. Vibrant means jumta, jagta, right? It's a very actively written, there is a very active activity of Sanskrit composition that continued even after 1850. He cannot say like Samskrita Bharati is an artificial activity, they are artificially reviving Sanskrit. He cannot say in the case of Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni. Kavyakanta Vasishta Ganapati Muni or Baladeva Bhushana Vidyasagara or Swami Dayananda Saraswati, these are not artificial. Right? They had their original tradition. They are coming from a Sanskrit tradition and they continued it. Whatever new ideas came to them, they expressed it through Sanskrit. And the kind of Sanskrit they used is also traditional Sanskrit only. They did not create a new Sanskrit the way Samskrita Bharati creates. Samskrita Bharati is Sanskrit, that the kind of Sanskrit that you are all speaking is Samskrita Bharati Sanskrit only. And this kind of Sanskrit is actually a new kind of Sanskrit. The Astiva, Nava, all this is new. प्रामाणिक भी हो सकता है, न्यू फॉर्म ऑफ संस्कृत है, सभी प्रामाणिक है, हम प्रामाणिक बना सकते हैं उसको, सम पारंपरिक तो नहीं है. पुराना जो संस्कृत है भास नाटक में या शाकुंतलम में, वह और संस्कृत भारती का संस्कृत अलग अलग है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल दशवादने, सपाद दशवादने, सार्ध षड्वादने, ऑल दिस इज Sanskrit Bharati Sanskrit. Sthapayantu, Tishtatu. All this is Sanskrit Bharati Sanskrit. There is nothing wrong. I am not actually opposing this or I have nothing against it. That is the way language develops. We have to create new genres and new kind of language and all that. There is absolutely nothing wrong. Can we say, can we use old methods of expressing time? We have to express this time only. For this time, we need all these expressions, vadane kind of expressions only. Vadanam was not there at that time. Vadanam is what? The bell ringing inside the clock, right? So, Shadvadane is that only. But traditionally also there was Vadanam. There was a person who was actually doing the Vadanam, bell ringing was happening. And expressions come like that only. We have to create expressions like that only. And at that time, people never say Atra Tishtha, Atra Sthapaya. All these things were not there. But we have to create a new language, and Sanskrit Bharati is creating, and you are all speaking that language only. Absolutely not a problem. But what I am saying is, what Swami Dayananda Saraswati used was not this language. It was the traditional Sanskrit language that was used for generations, for centuries. He continued that language, but he expressed new ideas, modern ideas. These are all absolutely radically new ideas, modern ideas. So, Sanskrit was used even after 1850 for new genres, new lyrical poetry, new harikathas, new plays, short stories, novels, haikus, free verse, and for Dharma Shastra, for Jyotishya, for everything in a highly new way, modern way, creative way, in a very vibrant way. Okay? Do you agree? Do you think Sanskrit was dead in 1850? If someone comes and tells you that with 1850 creativity in Sanskrit stopped, what is your response? Yes. Laugh at them. Yes, it should laugh like that only. Ha 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 ha. Loud. Laugh at them loud and say, you are a fool. You are blind. You have not observed the facts correctly. Right? Sometimes these people do it to provoke us like that only. Because out of provocation we bring all this information, then they get that knowledge. Oh, yes, now I understand. So, sometimes the provocative allegations are done on us only to elicit information from us, to get information from us. Okay, whatever is the reason, now it has helped us to realize that there is so much new activity in Sanskrit. Sanskrit did not stop. So, in that way sometimes Shatru also helps us. Enemy also helps us, because by provoking he is making us realize our own strength, our own greatness, our own positive aspects, right? So, sometimes Tulasidas says, always you have to keep a critic close to you. Your critic has to be close to you. Yes, we need Sheldon Pollocks. At least because of them only we are able to realize our strengths and positive aspects and greatnesses. So, that way we should thank him for giving us an opportunity to talk about the positive aspects of our own literature, our own tradition, our own heritage. Okay? Anything you want to ask? Any questions? प्राकृत भी आप समझ सकते हैं. आप समझ रहे हैं कि आप प्राकृत नहीं समझ सकते हैं. नहीं, आप ऐसा कीजिए, सब कुछ एडिशंस संस्कृत छाया दिया हुआ रहता है, प्राकृत के नीचे संस्कृत छाया हुआ छाया देते हैं, वो पढ़िए तब आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि ये ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है, ज़्यादा व्यत्यास नहीं है प्राकृत और संस्कृत में। एक बार पढ़ना है, 1 घंटा, एक ही घंटा पढ़िए, बाद में आप प्राकृत में बोलने लगेंगे। आज हम करेंगे, शाम में एक एक्सरसाइज करेंगे। शाम में बैठकर सब लोग हम बैठकर संस्कृत छाया पढ़ेंगे एक प्राकृत के लिए। देखिए आप लोग प्राकृत में बोलने लगेंगे। इतना मुश्किल नहीं है, इतना कठिन नहीं है। आप प्रयत्न नहीं किए हैं अब तक, किए हैं क्या कभी? हाँ, शाकुंतल में देख चुके हैं, उतना ही है। देखकर डर कर छोड़ दिए हैं। हाँ हाँ हाँ, यह तो आपके तरफ से ही हुआ है ना, आप उसको छोड़ दिए हैं, अटेम्प्ट नहीं किए हैं। एक बार अटेम्प्ट कीजिए, एक बार प्रयत्न तो कीजिए, आप समझ जाएंगे कि ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है, ज़्यादा व्यत्यास नहीं है, आप आसान से पढ़ जाएंगे। एक बार आज हम करेंगे, शाम में एक बार करेंगे, शाम में हम सब बैठ कर। नहीं, ये हर एक प्राकृत शब्द का संस्कृत मूल रहता ही है। थोड़े ऐसे रहेंगे इन प्राकृत में कि संस्कृत में भी होंगे, प्राचीन काल में लुप्त हुए होंगे। संस्कृत में होकर, संस्कृत में रहकर लुप्त हुए कुछ शब्द प्राकृत में रह गए होंगे। कुछ शब्द, बहुत कम, बहुत अल्प संख्यक शब्द। दे आर डायलेक्ट्स। इनमें से कौन सा आगे है, कौन सा पहला है? बंगाली में एजुकेटेड बंगाली पहला है, अनएजुकेटेड बंगाली पहला है? बोल नहीं सकते ना ऐसे। मगर हम शब्दों को देखें तो संस्कृत शब्द प्राकृत शब्द से संस्करण किया हुआ ऐसा दिखता है। प्राकृत शब्द तो प्रकृत, ओरिजिनल प्राकृत, राइट? So it gives an impression that Prakrit is original and Sanskrit is the refined one. But when you use the word apabhramsha in reference to Prakrit, it gives an impression that Sanskrit is original and Prakrit is the apabhramsha of Sanskrit. But both are correct. Because educated Bengali is the educated version of the uneducated, and uneducated Bengali is the corruption of the educated version. Both are correct. For example, you want to say first in educated Bengali, and in uneducated Bengali he makes it post, right? So you say that this post is the corrupt form of the first, right? But he thinks that you are correcting his post into fast. From his point of view, he thinks that post is correct, fast is the refined form of it. Okay? He says moho, and you say also moho only, but the way he pronounces, he thinks that is the original. That mine is the pure Bengali. This fellow is unnecessarily making it more sophisticated, right? Sanskrita, you are giving sanskarana to it, sanskara to it. That is why it is become Sanskrita, right? So the words Sanskrita and Prakrita can be used for any language in the world, even in African languages. Swahili, for example, Swahili can have a Prakrita form and Samskrita form. Swahili is an African language. One of the African languages is Swahili. We can say that among Swahili speakers also, there are educated Swahili speakers, uneducated Swahili speakers. So educated Swahili is Samskrita Swahili and uneducated Swahili is Prakrita Swahili. You understand? Samskrita Swahili means refined Swahili. Refined form of it. That's an attitude. Refinement is not a reality. Refinement is only an attitude. We think that we are refining it. वर्तत न वर्तते. What do you want to say? Vedas are original. So, okay. So, historically, you want to say that Veda to Sanskrita and then Prakrita. So, Prakrit is only later. Is this your argument? वेदे तो न वर्तते. प्राचीन काले वेदमन्त्राणां दर्शनं कदा कृतः तत्काले प्राकृतभाषा भाषिणः अपि सन्ति. वेदमन्त्रद्रष्टारः ब्रह्मर्षयः ते वेदभाषायामेव भाषयन्ति. Okay? So that Prakrita was parallel. That Prakrita, Veda Bhasha's parallel Prakrita was there. But they were not Brahmarshis. Anything else? If we don't agree that Veda Bhasha also at that time had a parallel Prakrita, we get a difficulty in handling the linguistics people, Indo-European language research and all that. We get into a stage where they start considering you to be superstitious, highly religious. For example, they show Dravidian words also in Rig Veda. As per their research, there are Dravidian words also available in Rig Veda. So, how can you handle such situations? You have to agree that when mantra darshana was happening, Brahmarshis were able to get revelations of Veda mantras. There was a spoken culture of Sanskrit also at that time. Just like that, they did not come from air. The Veda mantras did not come just from air. That kind of imagination lands us into problems when we actually have to be in communication with modern researchers. Okay? We cannot say that all of a sudden some language, some sound has come from skies and that was heard by Brahmarshis, that later turned into Sanskrit. That kind of belief lands us into problems in academics, in research. Okay? वही तो मैं बोल रहा था ना, संस्कृत बोलने में अधिकार नहीं है, अधिकार है, यह चर्चा अशास्त्रीय है इसलिए कि हम बंगाली में अभी विद्यावान लोगों का जो बंगाली है इसका अधिकार फल बेचने वाले को नहीं है, ऐसा बोल सकते हैं क्या? देखा जाता है नाटकों में, देखा ना? हाँ। हाँ, वह तो सच है, रियलिस्टिक है ना. रियलिस्टिक का मतलब क्या है? समाज में जो चल रहा है उसी को नाटक में बताते हैं. अधिकार का अर्थ है बोलने नहीं देते, है ना? बोलने नहीं देते, बोलने देते, ऐसा रहता है. समाज में कभी ऐसा चलता है क्या? आप उनको बोल सकते हैं क्या, जो फल बेचता है या जो मैकेनिक है उसके पास जाकर तुम एजुकेटेड बंगाली में, विद्यावान बंगाली में बोल नहीं सकते हो, मैं बोलने नहीं देता हूं, ऐसा बोल सकते हो क्या? वह नहीं बोलता है, यही सच्चाई है। नहीं बोलता है, सच्चाई है। हम बोलने नहीं देते, यह अधिकार का प्रश्न है। हम बोलने नहीं देते हैं क्या उनको? अगर बोलना चाहता है तो बोल सकता है ना। नहीं बोलता है, यह सच्चाई है। समझ गए? उनको अगर बोलना है तो बोल सकता है, हम बोलने देते हैं, अधिकार है, बोलने का अधिकार है। मैकेनिक या रिक्शा वाला या फल बेचने वाला, उसको अधिकार है एजुकेटेड बंगाली बोलने का, अधिकार है कि नहीं? नियम तो नहीं था। कौन बना सकते हैं नियम? भाषा के बारे में कोई नियम नहीं बना सकता है। अगर मैं बोलना चाहता हूं तो बोलता हूं, अगर नहीं बोलना चाहता हूं तो नहीं बोलता हूं। एक तरह का बोली रहती है, वो बोली तो चलती है ना? कौन समझ सकते थे? अगर देखिए, अभी बंगाली में भी एजुकेटेड बंगाली को समझते हैं ना। हम एजुकेटेड बंगाली में जब बोलते हैं वे लोग समझते हैं। बोल नहीं सकते ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते, अगर बोल भी सकते हैं, बोलना नहीं चाहते हैं। उनकी एक अस्मिता होती है। मेरी अस्मिता फल बेचने वालों की अस्मिता है, मैं रखना चाहता हूं, मेरी अस्मिता को रखना चाहता हूं। क्या होता है, मैं कल्चरल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी का आदमी हूं, मैं उनके घरों में जाकर उनके साथ बसकर बोल रहा हूं। अगर कोई उनके घर का एक बच्चा सीख लेता है एजुकेटेड बंगाली, जाता है घर में बोलता है, तो मारते हैं उसको, इसलिए कि या तुम एजुकेटेड बनना चाहते हो, तो तुम नाजुक बनना चाहते हो, नाजुक दिखाना चाहते हो। नहीं नहीं, ये नहीं चलता, हम ऐसे ही रहना है, बोलेंगे लोग। हाँ, गांव में तमाशा करता है, क्या बोलते हैं गांव में? अगर कोई अनपढ़ आदमी पढ़ाई का बंगाली बोलता है तो वे बोलेंगे कि क्या तमाशा कर रहा है, क्या बोलने लगा है, ये सब अच्छा नहीं है, रहो तुम गवार हो, गवारे ही हो रहो, बोलेंगे। ये क्यों करेंगे? अस्मिता के लिए करते हैं। उसमें अस्मिता में एक अभिमान है, जाति का अभिमान हो सकता है। मेरा जाति का भाषा है तो मैं इसी को बोलना है, मेरे जाति की अस्मिता को रखना है, ऐसा होता है, इसलिए चलता है। कोई अधिकार की कोई प्रश्न नहीं है इधर, अधिकार का कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है इसमें। अधिकार क्या होता है? जाके बोलो, अरे तुम सब एजुकेटेड बंगाली बोलो, एजुकेटेड बंगाली बोलो, तो बोलेंगे क्या? सोसाइटी में, कल्चर में कुछ भी ऑर्डर से नहीं होता, शासन से नहीं होता। ये सब जात वगैरह जो है, आज कोई एक पेड़ के नीचे बैठकर एक दिन नहीं बोला कि आज से तुम सब सोनार हो, आज से तुम सब कटार हो, ऐसा कुछ नहीं बोलते। बन जाता है ऐसे ही, समाज में एवोल्यूशन में आ जाता है, कोई शासन से तो नहीं बनाता है। ये हम ऊह करना कि एक पेड़ के नीचे बैठकर मनु आ गया और लोगों को बोला, हाँ सब लोग आ जाओ इधर, हाँ आज से तुम ब्राह्मण बनो, आज से तुम वैश्य बनो, ऐसा किया है? कुछ नहीं होता ऐसा। करेंगे क्या? समाज में कोई ब्राह्मण, वैश्य, शूद्र, क्षत्रिय नहीं था, सब लोग समान थे। एक पेड़ के नीचे बैठ गए, मनु बुलाए उन लोगों को कि ऐ सब लोग इधर आ जाओ, बैठो बैठो, आज से हाँ इन लोगों को ABCD इधर जाओ, तुम ब्राह्मण हो, हाँ तुम आओ, तुम क्षत्रिय हो। ऐसा बना सकते हैं क्या? कैसे बनता है ना? ये तो असंबद्ध है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है। ये समाज में परिणाम के स्वरूप आ जाता है, परिणाम के रूप में आ जाता है। भाषा भी ऐसा है, भाषा भी कोई तुमको अधिकार नहीं है, मैं बोलने नहीं देता हूँ, ऐसा कुछ नहीं बोल सकता है। जाओ अमेरिका जाओ, अमेरिका में भी अफ्रो अमेरिकन्स रहते हैं, अफ्रो अमेरिकन्स एक अलग तरह का इंग्लिश बोलते हैं। मैं अफ्रो अमेरिकन के गली में ही रह चुका हूँ, इसलिए मैं जानता हूँ। Have a good day. Aguma, wagwan. This is the English they speak. What did I say? Amma, have a good day. Aguma, wagwan. What is it? Hey, good man, where are you going? Hey, good man, where are... They used to call me good man. In that street, I had a name called good man. So, usually, they used to say Guma. Guma means good man. Where going? How are you today? How are you today? How are you today? They used to say, how are you? And we need not laugh, because ours is also a kind of English, theirs is also a kind of English. And did anyone tell these Afro-Americans that you should not speak educated English? तुमको अधिकार नहीं है ऐसे बोला गया है क्या? अगर बोलना चाहते हैं तो बोल सकते हैं ना. How are you today? They could have said, like any other American, they could have said, how are you today? They could have said that, but they do not say. The way they say, right? And it exactly sounds like our Bengali fruit seller only. One day in Chicago Union Station, I was buying a fruit. One girl was giving me 2 fruits. I said, I want one more. Then she was shouting, it exactly sounds like a Bengali woman shouting, right? It's similar, very similar, just as is English, that is a little different. She was just shouting, Amaya means Mary, one name. She was shouting, May, send me a fruit, she was saying. And she threw that fruit and, this man wants another one. This man wants another one. That's what I was telling you about Prakrit also. If you know the chaya, this man wants another fruit, another one. So if you know what she is saying, you know the chaya, English chaya of the Prakrit that she is speaking. He is just changing the same sentence. This man wants another one. She was saying, this man wants another one. Right? Same thing. She was just changing. To address friends, they use a word homie. Hommie. Homie is a word Afro-Americans use among themselves to address friends. So, but they don't pronounce it as homie and all that. They just say ome. Ome. Well, why? That is, a friend, where are you going? So, ome. And some of them don't even clearly pronounce that ma. Ome. They say, ome. Well, why? Where are you going? You are able to see that. Once you know how they do it, for 5 minutes if you observe, later you will be creating your own English, original, regular English out of that. Similar to Prakrit. If you observe Prakrit for some time, you will be able to know the Sanskrit behind it. You did not do that exercise, that is why you are thinking that you don't know Prakrit. You just do it for 5 minutes with a Prakrit line and Sanskrita chaya, you will immediately be able to do it. After doing for 5 lines, for 6th line you yourself can give the Sanskrita chaya.
Which was the most useful, both of them?
Which one? Prakrit or Sanskrit? Everything is useful. Yeah. See, the educated people are less in number all the time, correct? Uneducated people only are more in number in any society. So, Sanskrit speakers were less in number, Prakrit speakers were more in number. You want to know the number, or some Prakrit speakers were more in number. In any society, uneducated speakers are more in number. So, for example, if think that you were born during that period, you wanted to buy some fruits. If you go to the shop, fruit vendor would sell you fruits in Prakrit language only. And sometimes we ourselves, Sanskrit speaker only, would speak in Prakrit to the fruit vendor. Because we do it when we go to shops, sometimes deliberately we speak in uneducated Bengali. Right? Though we know educated Bengali, we try to speak in uneducated Bengali, right? They used to do the same. Sanskrit speakers also at that time used to speak in Prakrit only deliberately to be able to communicate to that Prakrit person. But most of the times we speak our educated Bengali, the other person speaks in uneducated Bengali, it continues. We don't change our languages. The same thing used to happen with Sanskrit also. Sanskrit speaker and Prakrit speaker used to understand the language of each other and they used to continue. Same thing happens all over the world, remember. For example, if an Afro-American speaks in Afro-American version of English and an American speaks in American version of English, the conversation continues. The shopkeeper says, what do you want? The Afro-American says, I want that. And he continues, I want you poor. And that fellow says, oh, I'd give you 2 more fruits. He continues in his English only, American English only. They don't change. The regular American English does not change into African American English simply because the other person is Afro-American. It does not change. It continues. Not only these social dialects, regional dialects also. There is a Philadelphia variety of American English which is nasal. And in other parts, say for example in California, they don't speak that kind of English. So, if a Californian and a Philadelphian come across each other, they speak in their own dialects. Philadelphian might be saying, where are you going? And Californian might say, I am going to California. And there are gender varieties also. The women variety of American English, they say, where? And the man says, what? You say something, if a woman does not hear, she says, where? It is what? And man says, what? Right? And they continue. Women speaks in women dialect, man speaks in man dialect. Man does not say you have no adhikara to speak man's dialect. It is not a question of adhikara, it is a femininity. Estrogen is a hormone. Testosterone is another hormone. Testosterone makes men behave the way men behave. Estrogen makes women behave the way women behave. So, out of that hormonal tendency, they speak in a certain way. Women speak in a certain way. We get surprised when Americans come and observe our language and give the details, no? They used to get surprised when I told them about their English. When I told on the Chicago University campus that these are the features of Chicago women English, they did not observe that. I observed because I am an outsider. Outsider always has this curiosity, what is happening. So I used to sit and observe how women speak, how men speak. I used to go and tell them that I used to even write score of like in women English. You know, like in women English there is so much. My mom was like, you go home, and I was like, I wouldn't go, and she was like, you accept. No, like. I was like means she said. My mom was like means my mom said. My mom was like is my mom said. If you want to sound colloquial, you should do this. Sharon was like, you go to the class, and I was like, I wouldn't go to the class. It means Sharon told me, you go to the class, and I told that I wouldn't go to the class. So and in women English there are more numerous likes. This like. And I used to observe and tell. Sometimes I told the women themselves, you used like 25 times, and they used to shy. They used to blush and say, oh, you are like, and this was like, what are you doing? You broke it? No. Is it okay there? Okay, no problem. Okay.
He was speaking about the genres of the modern Sanskrit thing.
Hmm.
And Satyavrata Shastri
Hmm.
spoke with a dairy.
Hmm.
Daily, that some of them write in it.
Correct.
He published that in Sanskrit. He wrote it all through his life.
And he published it. Yeah, this is also a good example. Diary writing is a totally new idea. And it was written in Sanskrit and it got published. That's also a new genre. Yeah. Uh-huh. No. See, niyatikrita niyama rahitam hladaikamayim, right? So, navanava unmesha shalini prajna eva pratibha. So, no alankara, no expression, no usage remains the same as it was at the time of Kalidasa. It can never remain. Poets can never remain like that. First of all, let us all remember that these alankaras, these figures of speech, are not created by poets. They are part of our day-to-day speech also. Even in our day-to-day speech, we use upamanas, we use upamalankara, we use rupakalankara, right? But poet does it more creatively. And every poet considers the way it has been already used by other people to be not to be used. It is already done. I should do it completely newly. So even the modern poets have done it absolutely in new ways. Okay? It always happens. Kalidasa's Upamalankaras have been discarded by later poets. Dandi's Alankaras have been discarded by later poets. They get discarded. That is the nature of a poet. Any poet cannot continue the same method as the older poet. Nava unmesha shalini. Right? That is the nature of poetry. It is always like that. Pratibha is navata. Without navata, there can be no pratibha. Okay? So it does not happen like that. You can study. You can, for example, you take it as your MPhil topic, difference between a contemporary Sanskrit poet and just another 50 years old or 100 years old poet. You just see the comparison and show the differences. You can show. Okay? It's always like that. Yeah. Tadeva tu. Adya charchaniyamsha tadeva. From 1850 you mean? हाँ, बहुत से काव्य हैं. आपको MA संस्कृत में सब यूनिवर्सिटीज में है, शायद यहाँ नहीं है, शायद यहाँ सिलेबस में नहीं रखा गया है. मैं आपको भेजूंगा. हाँ, contemporary, there is a full course, there is a full paper where only contemporary Sanskrit kavyas are there in that syllabus, in that first semester. One semester is fully devoted only for contemporary kavyas. I'll send you a list. Actually, that was sent to me by one IAS officer who is a Sanskrit speaker, Dhaval Patel. He is on our email list. Once I was discussing this contemporary Sanskrit only, he immediately sent me a huge list of books and he said, this is part of our MA semester syllabus only, this is being taught. Huge list of Sanskrit kavyas that have been composed during this period, contemporary period. They are being composed. There are many poets like this Ashtavadhani you have, there are many poets and they are composing kavyas. There are at least some very well known names, some 50 names today alive, Sanskrit poets that are writing kavyas, new kavyas every time. So, huge number of kavya publications are coming and they are in the syllabus, they are kept in the syllabus. Probably in your MA syllabus they have not created, but because your head of the department is able to hear now, he is going to keep it. Right? Sir. Because he is able to see the conversation and your interest in this topic, he will definitely have one semester course only with contemporary kavyas.
You mentioned that one, David Schulman, like that, those who have towards our culture. Can you mention some more foreigners' names who are good Sanskrit scholars?
There are many actually for that matter. I was giving you the name of Jeffrey Long, Jeffrey Long, Long, and John E.M. Hoban, John Jan, N, E separately, M separately, M, letter M, and Hoban, Hauben, Hoban. He is a French professor, Hoban, and David Knipe from America, David Knipe, from Wisconsin University, and Wisconsin University, US, and a huge number of them. Actually, yesterday I was telling the children also when they were walking with me, these positive attitude professors are more in number than the negative attitude professors. Always what happens in society is very small number can create a lot of havoc. Okay, say when strikes happen on the road, how many people burn the buses? 2 or 3 only. But they create such a big havoc on the road to look as though some very big happening is going on. In this entire class, even if there is one mischievous child, it is enough to create all the problem. Right? All others are good boys only. One child is enough to create all the problem. These people, like the names that we are mentioning, are also like those mischievous children. They are creating all the problem. That should not make us think that all the Western Indologists are against us, they are talking only bad about us, like that. No. Many of them come to study Sanskrit only out of respect and love for Sanskrit. Otherwise, why should they study? They don't get any extra money for doing this or any such thing. No, they have a love for the language, they have a taste for the language. That is why they come. When they, for example, Mandakranta Vritta, Megha Sandesha, it's a beautiful rhyming, rhythmic song. They enjoy it. I have seen many Sanskrit professors, they teach Mandakranta Vritta very beautifully, and they make their children dance also, their class students dance to the Mandakranta. In your class you are not dancing, but they dance. They dance for Mandakranta Vritta. So they enjoy Sanskrit a lot. There is a lot of respect for Sanskrit. There is a lot of love for Sanskrit all over the world. Wherever Sanskrit studies are there, they have love for it. We are talking only, these people come into news because they create news. They want to create news. I once said, let me conclude my lecture today with this statement. I once said in one of my responses that uneventful journeys, you understand the word uneventful journeys? Eventful journey means a journey where there is an accident. Okay, uneventful journey means a journey where there are no accidents. Uneventful journeys are not reported as news, but those are the ones which passengers love. Right? So, which are uneventful journeys? Good Indologists are uneventful journeys. They don't get reported as news. Only eventful journeys are reported as news, and these people think that they are heroes because they are creating news. Okay? But they are not actually heroes, they are villains. Okay? Yeah.
स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय